Have you ever noticed how the world seems to reward those who speak the loudest, who dominate the conversation, who fill every second of silence? But what if I told you there's a hidden power in the exact opposite? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, discovered something that changes everything. Silence isn't weakness. For introverts, it's a secret weapon that most people don't even know exists. While the world chases noise and attention, there's a quiet force operating behind the scenes, observing, processing, understanding. And this force can be your greatest advantage in life. Jung spent decades studying the human mind and reached a revolutionary conclusion. He realized that people divide into two basic energy orientations: extroverts, who turn toward the external world, and introverts, who turn inward. But here's the detail most people ignore. Jung never said one way was better than the other. He saw introversion as a legitimate and powerful way of existing in the world. Introverts aren't broken people waiting to be fixed. They're individuals who process reality differently, drawing energy from the internal world of thoughts and emotions. For Jung, this inner journey wasn't escapism. It was where true psychological transformation happened. The problem is, our culture gets it all wrong. How many times have you heard someone say that an introverted person needs to get out more, loosen up, be more social? This constant pressure comes from a fundamental misunderstanding. Being introverted has nothing to do with being shy. Shyness is fear of social judgment. Introversion is a natural preference for calmer environments and deeper interactions. An introvert can speak in public to thousands of people without any problem, but afterward will need hours alone to recover. A shy person, on the other hand, fears the social situation itself, whether they're introverted or extroverted. Here's where the revelation of hidden power begins. When an introvert chooses to remain silent, it's not passivity, it's strategy. Think about it. In a room full of people all talking at once, who's really in control? The person shouting the loudest, or the one observing everything carefully? Silence allows you to choose your battles. You don't waste energy on empty conversations or meaningless debates. You save your strength for the moments that truly matter. And when you finally decide to speak, your words carry a weight that others can't ignore. But something even deeper is happening. Jung discovered that introverts and extroverts literally recharge their batteries in opposite ways. An extrovert comes back from a party energized, ready for more. An introvert comes back exhausted, needing time alone to recover. This isn't a factory defect. It's intentional design of the psyche. Silence and solitude function as a charging station for the introvert. Each hour spent in quietness restores the mental and emotional energy spent in social interactions. Trying to force an introvert to socialize constantly is like trying to use a phone without ever charging the battery. Eventually, the system crashes. And what happens during this time alone? This is where the magic really happens. Silence creates space for something Jung considered essential: deep reflection. When you're constantly bombarded by external stimuli, conversations, notifications, demands for attention, your mind never has a chance to process anything. You live on the surface, reacting to the world without ever really understanding it. The introvert, on the other hand, uses silence as an internal laboratory. They examine their own reactions, question their motivations, explore their emotions. This process is what Jung called individuation, the path of becoming truly who you are, instead of just imitating what others expect. This inner journey develops something extraordinary. While others are busy projecting an image to the world, the introvert is building real self-knowledge. They know why they do what they do. They understand their shadows, their fears, their genuine desires. This level of awareness is rare. Most people live on autopilot, repeating patterns they've never questioned. The introvert who embraces silence has access to an inner wisdom that can't be bought, taught, or imitated. It can only be discovered in quietness. But the power of silence doesn't end in the inner world. It manifests in very practical ways in the external world, too. Think about the last time you were in a conversation where someone really listened to you, not pretending to listen while preparing their next line, but really paid attention to you. How did that make you feel? Probably special, valued, understood. That's exactly what introverts do naturally. While they're silent, they observe. They notice body language that contradicts words. They pick up on meaningful pauses, averted glances, unspoken tensions. They read between the lines of social reality. This silent observation is like having X-ray vision in a world where everyone's wearing masks. You see beyond the performance people present. You begin to understand the real motivations behind actions. Over time, you develop sharp intuition about character and intentions. Not because you're magical or special, but because you're actually paying attention while others are distracted by their own voices. In negotiations, relationships, work environments, this skill is worth gold. You see moves before they happen. You identify true allies and disguised threats. And when the introvert finally decides to speak, here's another crucial advantage. Most people talk to fill empty space. They verbalize every unfiltered thought that passes through their head. The result is a flood of words without substance, promises they can't keep, opinions that change with the wind. The introvert works differently. They process internally first. They examine the thought from multiple angles. They consider the consequences. Only then do they decide if it's worth verbalizing. This means when they speak, every word has been chosen with purpose. This economy of language creates impact. In a meeting where everyone's talking at once, the person who stayed quiet listening and finally raises their hand, that person has everyone's attention. Their words carry weight because they're rare. They didn't waste credibility on impulsive opinions about every trivial subject. They saved their contributions for the moments that really count. It's like the difference between someone who shouts all the time and someone who normally speaks softly but suddenly raises their voice. Constant shouting becomes background noise. The rare shout makes everyone stop and pay attention. There's also an aspect of protection in silence that Jung understood deeply. Not every energy deserves your time. Not every provocation deserves a response. Not every drama deserves your participation. The world is full of people who drain others' energy, who create problems to feel important, who drag others into unnecessary conflicts. The introvert who masters silence builds an invisible wall against these invasions. When someone tries to pull them into a verbal fight, they simply don't take the bait. When confronted with gossip or drama, they withdraw without explanations. This ability to not engage protects their inner peace like nothing else can. And here's something few people realize. This protective silence isn't coldness or indifference. It's wisdom. It's recognizing that your mental and emotional energy is limited and precious. You can't solve all the world's problems. You can't convince everyone. You can't be available for every demand. So you choose. You invest your energy where it really makes a difference. In relationships that nourish. In projects that matter. In causes that resonate with your values. Everything else? You let it pass. Without guilt, without explanations. Just a gentle silence that says, "This isn't for me." Jung talked a lot about the unconscious and how it communicates with us. He discovered that the deep mind doesn't use the logical language of consciousness. It speaks through symbols, dreams, sudden intuitions, that strange feeling that something is right or wrong without you knowing exactly why. But here's the problem. You can only hear these messages in quietness. A noisy mind, constantly distracted by external stimuli, never catches the whispers of the unconscious. It's like trying to hear a whispered conversation in the middle of a crowded party. Impossible. The introvert has natural access to this channel of internal communication. The hours spent in silence aren't empty. They're moments where deep insights emerge. Solutions to problems you didn't even know you were processing. Understandings about life patterns that repeat. Warnings about directions you should avoid. Jung called this the wisdom of the self, the organizing center of personality that knows more about you than your conscious ego. But you only access this wisdom when you create space for it to appear. And that space is made of silence. Something fascinating happens when you don't reveal yourself completely. People get curious. They want to understand who you are. In today's world, where everyone posts every detail of their life online, where people become open books in 5 minutes of conversation, mystery has become rare. And the rare is valuable. When you don't share everything immediately, when you keep a part of yourself private and protected, you become intriguing. People perceive there's depth there, layers that can't be accessed quickly. This isn't manipulation. It's a natural consequence of having a rich inner life. This mystery creates a different kind of magnetism. It's not the loud attraction of the entertainer who dominates the environment. It's something more subtle and lasting. The people who approach you aren't seeking superficial fun. They're seeking real connection. They want to understand this depth they perceive. And when you finally open up to someone, when you share thoughts and feelings you normally keep to yourself, it creates a special bond. The person feels honored because they understand you don't do this with just anyone. This kind of connection is worth more than 1,000 superficial friendships. And while others talk nonstop, the introvert develops a skill that's dying in the modern world: true listening. I'm not talking about waiting for your turn to speak. I'm talking about really hearing. Paying attention not just to the words, but to the tone, the emotion behind them, what's not being said. Asking questions that show you're following along. Remembering details the person mentioned weeks ago. This is so rare today that when someone experiences it, the reaction is almost shock. People aren't used to being truly heard. This skill transforms relationships. At work, you become the confidant colleagues seek when they need real advice. In friendships, you're the person others can be vulnerable with. In romance, you create a safe space where your partner feels truly understood. And all of this comes from a simple practice. Talk less, listen more. Let the other person finish their thoughts. Don't interrupt with your own story. Don't offer unsolicited solutions. Just be present, attentive, genuinely interested in their experience. Now, pay attention to this. Silence has tactical power too. A well-placed pause can completely change the dynamic of a conversation. Imagine you're negotiating something, a salary, a price, any kind of deal. You make your offer and then, instead of continuing to talk, justifying, explaining, you simply stop. You stay silent. You look at the other person and wait. You know what happens? The tension of the silence becomes so uncomfortable that usually it's the other person who speaks first. And whoever speaks first after a proposal generally makes a concession. This works because most people are terrified of silences. They feel a compulsive need to fill every pause. So they start justifying themselves, making hasty counteroffers, revealing information they didn't intend to share. The introvert who's comfortable in silence has a tremendous advantage here. They don't feel the same discomfort. They can sit in the quietness for as long as necessary, watching the other person squirm. This isn't cruelty. It's just using a natural tool you possess that others haven't mastered. The same principle applies in arguments. When someone's emotionally worked up, throwing accusations, trying to provoke a reaction, silence is your greatest ally. You don't need to defend against every attack. You don't need to correct every distortion. Often, the most powerful strategy is simply not to engage. Let the person discharge their energy into the void. Without fuel to feed the conflict, their anger eventually exhausts itself, and you remain calm, centered, in control of your own emotions. This isn't passivity. It's real strength. Let's talk about creativity now. Jung was fascinated by creative processes and noticed a pattern. The great scientific discoveries, revolutionary works of art, innovative solutions to complex problems, they rarely came from active effort. They came from moments of quietness. Einstein had his epiphany about relativity while daydreaming. Newton realized gravity while resting under a tree. Archimedes shouted "Eureka" in the bath. The pattern is clear. The mind needs empty space to make creative connections. When you're constantly stimulated, your brain functions in reactive mode. It responds to the environment, processes information, but doesn't create anything genuinely new. Creativity requires a different state of consciousness, a state where your mind can wander freely, making unexpected associations between seemingly unrelated concepts. This only happens when you turn down the external noise. Introverts have natural access to this creative state because they spend regular time in silent contemplation. It's no coincidence that so many artists, writers, philosophers, and scientists throughout history exhibited strongly introverted traits. Think about what happens when you have a difficult problem. You focus on it intensely, trying to force a solution, and nothing works. Then you temporarily give up, go for a walk, take a shower, or just stare out the window without thinking about anything specific. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the solution appears. Complete. Obvious. As if it was always there waiting to be discovered. This is the unconscious working behind the scenes. It continued processing the problem even after you consciously stopped thinking about it. But it can only deliver the answer when you create a moment of silence to receive it. Beyond this, there's a deep philosophical aspect to silence that Jung explored. He believed that many truths about existence can't be captured in words. Language is useful, but limited. There are experiences, perceptions, understandings that simply don't fit into verbal concepts. When you try to force everything into words, you distort the original truth. Sometimes, silence is the most honest answer. It's recognizing that certain things must be felt, lived, directly experienced, not spoken. This perspective changes everything when you realize you don't need to explain or justify every aspect of your existence. That it's okay to have internal experiences you don't share. That your inner life can be private, even sacred. We live in a culture that demands total transparency, where you're expected to document and explain everything. But you don't owe any of that to anyone. Your depths are yours. And protecting them in silence isn't selfishness. It's preserving what's sacred in you. Now imagine trying to live as an introvert in a world designed for extroverts. Open offices where privacy doesn't exist. Expectations of constant networking. Pressure to be more visible, more sociable, more animated. The pressure is real and can make you feel like something's wrong with you. But here's the truth Jung tried to communicate. There's nothing wrong. You're not broken. You don't need fixing. Society just standardized a model of success and behavior based on extroverted characteristics. That doesn't make this model universal or correct. The key is to stop trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. This doesn't mean you should avoid all social interaction or never leave your house. It means honoring your real needs. If you need 2 hours alone after a social event, you take those 2 hours without guilt. If you prefer deep conversations with one person instead of parties with 20, you seek those connections. If your idea of fun is reading a book instead of going to a crowded bar, you do that without apologizing. The more you honor your authentic nature, the stronger you become. And strengthened in your authenticity, you discover something liberating. The people who really matter don't just accept your introversion, they value it. They appreciate that you're not superficial, that you think before you speak, that you offer real presence when you're with them, that you see beyond social masks. The relationships you build as your authentic self are more solid, more meaningful, more lasting than any forced friendship could be. You might have fewer connections than an extrovert, but the ones you have go much deeper. Jung also observed that introverts often develop an inner life so rich that external reality sometimes seems pale in comparison. This has its pitfalls, certainly. You can get lost in infinite reflections and avoid necessary action. But it also has its gifts. You can find satisfaction in places others don't even think to look. A solitary walk can be an adventure. A book can be a transformative experience. An hour of reflection can resolve issues that years of therapy didn't touch. You don't depend on the external world to entertain or fulfill you. You're self-sufficient on a level that frightens some people and inspires others. This self-sufficiency is especially valuable in difficult times. When crises happen, when the external world goes crazy, when collective anxiety is high, the introvert has a refuge. They can retreat to their inner world, where they find peace and stability that no external circumstance can destroy. This isn't escapism or denial. It's having an internal center strong enough to withstand external storms. It's knowing that no matter what happens out there, you always have a safe place within yourself. And when you're centered like this, something interesting happens. You stop seeking external validation. You stop needing others' approval to feel valuable. You stop comparing yourself to everyone. You simply exist, knowing who you are, accepting your strengths and limitations. This inner peace radiates. People feel it even without you saying anything. And ironically, the less you seek attention, the more you naturally attract it. Not through performance or effort, but just by being solidly, unquestionably yourself. There's also a spiritual dimension to this that Jung explored deeply. In practically every contemplative tradition in the world, Buddhism, Christian mysticism, Sufism, shamanism, you find the same central practice: silence, meditation, inner quietness. This isn't coincidence. The sages of all ages discovered that the divine, or the transcendent, or whatever you want to call it, can only be found beyond the noise of the mind. Introverts have a natural advantage in this spiritual journey. They're already accustomed to quietness. They already know how to be with themselves without constant distraction. This doesn't mean every introvert is automatically enlightened, but it means the door to spiritual depths is more accessible. You can explore existential questions with the seriousness they deserve. You can sit with the mystery of existence without needing to immediately resolve it with ready-made answers. You can tolerate uncertainty, ambiguity, the absence of clear meaning. This capacity to endure the unknown without panicking is crucial for both psychological and spiritual growth. Jung taught that the goal of life isn't to be happy all the time, or to have success in society's terms. The goal is to become who you really are. This process of individuation requires brutal honesty with yourself. It requires confronting your shadows, the parts of you that you prefer to deny. It requires questioning beliefs you've always assumed as truth. It requires giving up who you think you should be, and embracing who you really are. Silence and introspection are essential tools in this journey. You can't truly know yourself while you're always distracted by the external world. And perhaps the deepest power of silence is this: it teaches you to be comfortable with yourself. We live in an age of infinite distraction. You never have to be alone with your thoughts. There's always a phone to check, a series to watch, a notification to respond to. But this constant avoidance has a cost. You lose touch with who you are. You become a stranger to yourself. The introvert who embraces silence develops a deep friendship with themselves. They learn that their own company isn't something to be avoided, but something to be valued. When you're comfortable with yourself, everything changes. You stop tolerating bad relationships because you'd rather be alone than in bad company. You stop accepting jobs that drain your soul because you know your inner peace is more valuable. You stop living according to others' expectations because your own approval has become more important. This is true freedom. Not the freedom to do what you want, but the freedom to be who you are without apologizing. In the end, the silence of introverts isn't weakness, shyness, or social inadequacy. It's a different way of being in the world, a way that this noisy society desperately needs but rarely values. While everyone screams for attention, the introvert offers something more precious: real presence, careful observation, deep thought, authentic connections. These qualities don't make noise, they don't call attention, but they change lives, solve problems, and create meaning in ways that all the chatter in the world never will. So here's the truth Jung knew. Your silence isn't something to be overcome, it's something to be mastered. Each hour of quietness strengthens you. Each moment of reflection deepens your wisdom. Each choice not to engage preserves your energy for what really matters. You don't need to be louder, more social, more visible. You need to be more yourself. The world will continue to value those who speak the loudest. But the people who truly understand, they'll look for those who speak with more truth. And that person can be you. And if you enjoyed this content, you might also like our exclusive material, Alchemy and Archetypes, a guide that can help you in your personal transformation process. Check it out in the first pinned comment. Did you like this video? Subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a thank you.